What's going on, you guys? Welcome to the Unlock Your Freedom podcast with Kevin Kepple. If you're looking to create more in your life, and if you want more of anything, it's not about doing more, it's about being more. So I'm excited you're here, and I'll see you guys on the inside. Alrighty, welcome back, everybody. Man, I got a really cool guest for y'all today, Mark Silver. Man, I'm going to let Mark explain his genius to you guys, but I'm super excited to really learn from you. And I got a chance to read your bio and look at your website, and everything is about just coming from a heart-centered place, from what I understand. And that's really cool because I have a heart and I like to create from that too. And so, man, just tell us a little bit about you, Mark, and how you'd like to serve people.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really happy to be here because, it's really all about love. It's all about love. We've had our company for 23 years. I've been helping small business owners in all kinds of ways develop their businesses and, in the nitty-gritty. And at every point of difficulty and challenge, it's really about love. I'm not saying there's not technical things to learn. I'm not saying there's not skills that need to be acquired or it doesn't mean that our mind doesn't need to be involved. But really, when you boil it right down to it, any problem that we've confronted, if we bring love in, if we bring caring, if we ignite our natural curiosity and wonder and care for people, for the world around us, it helps us find a way through. And that's what I've been, striving to do with the thousands of people that we've worked with over the years, which is to how do you find a way through in business that doesn't forget about love, that includes love that's already there to be found.
Yeah, and that speaks so deeply to me. I think when we're aligned with that unconditional love, not the I love you if, but just I love you period, it makes everything so much easier. And like my not joke is, you want to practice unconditional love, that's why you get married, so you can practice that with your in-laws, right? It's like, I don't even have to like you to love you, and I'll just love you from over here. And I have some cool in-laws, but most people understand what I'm saying. And I worked with one of the clients that I worked with was a blue collar company. They do land surveying, and the CEOs, it's like, man, if you come in here talking about love and all that, like, they're not going to resonate with that. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, these are like blue collar guys, and like, they need love too. And, men and women, it doesn't matter where you're at. And I know that one of the things you help people with is really healing toxic cultures, which is, oh my gosh, it's very simple, but not easy. Right. And I'd love to hear some of your ideas around that.
Yeah. Well, so we have to understand, I think one of the things that I think is a helpful context in approaching this is that although commerce and trade has been part of humanity forever, thousands of years, there's always been some way that we've done what some people call indirect barter, using some kind of exchange process for trade. But the economic and business system that has been, they create less conflict. And in case study after case study after case study, they show that when employees feel cared for, when your team feels cared for, when they're well compensated, when they don't feel like you're trying to take from them, then they want to contribute. My experience, even within my own company, is that my job is more about encouraging people to take time off and to slow down, to not harm themselves, and when they're sick, to take time off, rather than it is trying to get them to work. I think that we have this story that's been told us that is false, that people are naturally lazy and people naturally want to take advantage. People try to take advantage when they feel they're being taken from. When people are being given to, there's a natural generosity that emerges in the human heart that I think we see over and over and over again in our lives and in the world around us. And so when you start to build a culture that genuinely cares for everybody that is related to it, then the business can do better. And the people have the room to feel concerned about, oh, is the bottom line doing okay? Like, is the business going to be okay? And you start seeing people at every level caring about what's happening.
Yeah, I think that is a really profound statement that really landed deep when you said when people are taken from, that leads to taking advantage of the situation. You said it more eloquently than I did, but that's what I heard. And I think that's really brilliant. And what are some of the ways that maybe if somebody's a leader in a culture that isn't that aligned with love, they could bring that more into alignment? Because, like you said, people are like, "Oh, that's woo woo. This is business. We need to, do business and all that." So, how do you even bring that into the stratosphere for them?
Yeah. Well, I think, one of the very first things that is really the hardest is, and this is in every situation, right? Is to admit that there's a problem. Oh, like that the issue here is that whatever the problem is that we think we're looking at, that it's a symptom of a deeper problem. Look, I was a paramedic for years. I worked in 911 system in Oakland, California, in Alameda County in California. And when you're diagnosing, when you're trying to like get your arms around like why somebody's doing really badly, like, yeah, you're looking at the symptoms, but the symptoms are leading you to like what's really going on underneath. Like, are they having trouble breathing because their airways blocked, or because there's something going on, they've got, fluid in their lungs, or something else that's happening. And so when you're looking at a problem in your business, and you see people acting out, you see people not working the way that you'd like to see them, is it really their problem? Or are they responding to something? If you have one person on a team, then maybe there's something individual with that person. But if you're seeing it as a pattern, okay, people probably aren't feeling cared for in some way. How can we take a step back and start to look like, are the people that we are hoping are going to care for the company, are they really feeling cared for? Are they feeling witnessed? Are they feeling seen? And that's one of the deepest things, is to feel really seen. And that's one of the first things that gets cut out in business culture, is because there's this strange, I'm just going to call it what it is. It's just a really strange thing. Like, you can't talk about love. Like, we're human beings. Love is at the center of our existence. And you can't talk about love in this one area of our lives that takes up a tremendous amount of time. If that's been left out, if we can really, it's one of the first things that gets cut out of the business conversation, because it's not professional, or we're worried about how we're going to be perceived. Or if we want people to show up and bring their creativity and their caring, which is a kind of vulnerability, we have to be willing to be vulnerable first. We have to be willing to show our hearts first. And whether you're talking about sales and trying to reach clients and customers, or whether you're trying to reach your own team, as a leader, that vulnerability, appropriate vulnerability, I hope
Yeah.
everyone here is like has nuance as adults, and we're not talking about like talking about
Yeah.
your sex life in the, in the boardroom, or in the team meeting. I don't, but appropriate vulnerability of like being able to show that you're a human being, and that you see everyone around you as human beings. And then there's a possibility that they feel seen, and then you can actually get to work, instead of everyone spending most of their energy trying to cover that over, and then spend what's left with their energy to do some kind of
Yeah,
adequate
I think
job.
that the vulnerability piece is so brilliant, and thanks for the caveat. That was pretty funny. Yeah, obviously appropriate vulnerability, but like, man, like I used to think when I was first in a leadership position in my 20s, like, oh, I'm the leader. I'm supposed to have all the answers and be perfect, and like that's so inauthentic for starters. And if I'm not being authentic, people aren't going to trust me. If they don't trust me, they don't feel safe. If they don't feel safe, they're definitely not creating anything new. They're just reacting to what's known. And man, like it is a superpower to be vulnerable. Like I definitely don't have all the answers, and that's okay. I don't need to have all the answers. Steve Jobs was a brilliant guy, but building businesses for sure. And he said, "We don't hire smart people so we can tell them what to do. We hire them so they can tell us what to do." And like that's brilliant. I don't hire
Right.
people to build a website for me and tell them how to
Right.
code because that'd be a short conversation. Like, yeah, I don't know, Google it. But that's that's really profound.
Right. Mm,
Let's talk about
And the
yeah,
funny thing is, let
absolutely.
me say one more thing. I'm happy to let it go after that, but it's like it lands as profound because it's been so absent when it's actually so normal. It's actually so normal, this sense of this need for vulnerability and this need for, not having all the answers and just being open.
So I
Done
know
that.
one of the things that we chatted about briefly before we kicked things off was the pay what you want approach. And I've seen a lot of people do that. And every time I've seen that, it feels really good. Like it feels like there's this really cool energy behind it. Like the first person I remember seeing that or that really stood out to me was
Hmm.
Byron Katie.
Mm.
And I think she's pretty delightful. I really like her work and it's just, make a donation kind of thing. And it didn't feel swarmy at all. It felt really authentic and powerful, and like she's just given a lot. I was just curious what your approach is with that and your thoughts are around pay what you want.
Yeah. So it's not as straightforward as it seems. Most of our business, not all of our business, but a lot of our business model is based on a what I call pay from the heart approach. And a lot of clients who've come to us who have experimented either with sliding scale or pay what you want had really mixed results with it. They often have people just not making enough money from it, and it's challenging. And I where people I think often go wrong with it is that they don't include themselves in the process because we're not used to that kind of an approach. It needs a little bit of explanation. If somebody is like a big name and they have like a huge audience and they already have plenty of money and they're not worried about like how much they're getting from an individual thing, then then they can probably do whatever they want and it's going to work out in one way or the other. But when you're a small business and you have a much more limited audience and you don't have 100% profit margin, 50%, whatever, it's like you got to pay attention to how much money is coming in. What needs to happen is that one, you need to explain it a little bit. It needs to take up a little bit of space and explain why you're doing it and where it's coming from. And it also needs to include your own perspective, like what your business needs. When we do pay from the heart, what I do internally, what we do on our team is we look at the offer and we look at, where our break even is and what our costs are and what feels good to us. And we say, okay, here's a minimum that we want to accept. And here's the amount that's thriving. And this is what we're asking people to pay for is somewhere in this range, not just whatever they want. It's not a donation. It's like you're paying for something. And in many of our offers, not all, again, not all of them, but where we can make it work, I do create what I call a food and shelter exception. Because we work with people all over the world and we work with people in all kinds of different circumstances. And a lot of our, there's a certain number of people in our audience that they're not in a great situation. Maybe they're a single parent, maybe they have some kind of chronic illness or disability like so many people have, and they're trying to start a business or trying to be self-employed for the very small businesses. And we say, if paying our minimum amount would affect your food and shelter, or you're in an economy, you're in a different country, and the economy is such that if you paid our minimum amount, it's just an absurd number for you, because of the exchange rate. And then, you are welcome. Pay less. You can pay less than the minimum amount. But we ask them to take that into consideration. Like it's like if it's going to cause you harm, then yes, pay less. But don't just pay less because, you know, you want to pay less or you having some kind of an emotional reaction, you're feeling tight about it. But you can pay for it even if it's a stretch. That's what we do. I taught a whole webinar on this, Adventures in Pay from the Heart, because I've played with this for some time. We first experimented with it I guess about 6, 7 years ago, when an offer that had always sold well wasn't that year. And I'm like, what's going on? I reached out to our audience. I'm like, what's going on? This offer always sells well. People always enroll. And there was like something going on in the economy, or I'm trying to remember the exact situation, but a lot of people were really struggling. And I said, you know what? Let's do an experiment. People aren't signing up. Let's do pay from the heart. and I kind of like sat with it and figured out these different pieces and put it out there. We had the highest enrollment in terms of numbers that we had ever had, like just crazy high numbers. And we made the same amount of money, even though people were paying less on average, because of the way it works. What I see is that there are always people who want to take advantage. There are. But I don't want to run my business according to those people. The vast majority of folks are people who really like, most people say, I paid your minimum. I want to pay more, but I just can't. Can I, can I pay you more later? Like we get messages like that all the time. And it's such that I had to actually put a message on the site saying, if you really can't afford it, we trust you. You don't have to ask for permission to pay less, because it was taking up time to like just let people know that it was okay that they weren't paying the absolute top number. And that's my experience with humanity, is that the vast majority of people want to do well, and you just have to make your own needs, right? What goes back to the previous conversation about being vulnerable and being honest. Just have to make our own needs visible. Our business needs this number. I don't explain all the back end. I don't show them our P&L and our spreadsheet, but I just say like, this is the minimum that we can accept to make this really work for us. And people really respond in beautiful ways.
Man, that's a really courageous model for sure, but it's also brilliant and beautiful. And man, there's so much uh, like duh, but heart behind that. And we're all in this thing together. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to, figure out what makes us unique and how we can use that to create value for other people. It's super simple, but doesn't mean easy, right? And I
Right.
love that.
It is simple, and people don't like it is courageous. It's like it's being in business is vulnerable, but having a job is vulnerable also, but it's not always so visible. Like if you're used to getting a paycheck, you're not always thinking about, wow, I could be laid off or the company could go under. And when you have a business, all of that is visible to you in a different way. And so it does require a certain fortitude and a certain courage and just a certain resilience and willingness. And it's like, there's this myth out there that entrepreneurs are risk takers. Entrepreneurs are not risk takers. Entrepreneurs like I need to pay the mortgage and, and keep my family fed and the same as anyone else. But when you know all the factors, then you can take educated risks. You can make it as safe as possible. We were doing Pay from the Heart from one of our main offers. We have an online membership where we help business owners, and it was not doing so well financially. And I was realizing, like, when we really sat down and looked at it, even though we had good enrollment in terms of membership, we're like, oh, you know what? We're leaning too hard on yes, please come, we want to take care of you. And we weren't being vulnerable enough about our own needs. And I went through a bunch of emotional stuff, with my wife, who's a partner in the business, and with the team, and thinking about like, okay, how do we present this? And the first thing was like, okay, well, we're just going to stop Pay from the Heart, or we're going to like set this, or, like the hardline approach. And that's like, that feels terrible. And then it just arrived at the same thing we've been talking about, is being vulnerable. And I wrote a whole letter to the community, took a lot of care writing it and just explaining where we're coming from and what we needed and what was involved, and being vulnerable about how much we want to care for people and how we need to be cared for also. People responded. People that couldn't necessarily afford it very well, even people that were paying way under our minimum, upped it a little bit, and other people said, oh my goodness, I just hadn't been thinking about it, and they upped it to what we really needed to get paid. And it made a huge difference. And so it requires us, I think, being in business and being in life requires us to care about other people and to care about ourselves and to see it as a whole, and to be willing to not only want to care for other people's needs, but allow other people to care for our needs, which is also empowering, And I find that kind of circle makes for such a beautiful life, but the business itself feels fantastic. And the feedback we get from our clients is just out of this world. I mean, it helps that we kind of know what we're talking about. We're good at what we do. I mean, you want to be good at
Yeah.
what you do also, but having this aspect in the business model has been so fulfilling. It's been so fulfilling.
Yeah, man, that's really unique and it's really beautiful. I love what you're doing, what you're sharing. Thank you for the way you're showing up, man. That's really, really cool. But we're all in
Mm,
this thing together again. So, and like, and that's not me versus you. It's us. And took me 30 years to get there. But like, once I finally got there, like everything got way easier. I know that is something that a lot of people miss. And it's like, I take you, you get, or vice versa. And this is not what it is. It's like we can all win together and
mm,
like we can win at a high level together. Man, what's a question that I haven't asked that I could ask that you'd like to share about before we transition to the end here?
mm. Oh, yeah. It's hard to think, what question do I want to be asked? I guess I'm pretty explicit about my spiritual path. I have my Masters of Divinity. I'm a Sufi Muslim. I've been on my path for a long time and I'm pretty explicit about it. But any path that one walks that gives you access to love is what works. And it says in the holy book that I study from in the Quran, it says we meaning Allah, the divine God. Allah is just Arabic for God. It's just another, it's the same word. We've created you in different peoples and communities so that you may know one another. Diversity is our best strength. If you have a company or you have customers or you have whatever, and they're all just the same people, you're missing all this like false outrage about wokeness or diversity or all of this stuff. We're just missing out on the richness of each other. Like the more that we can lift each other up and the more that we can learn from different kinds of people, the more diverse your team is, the more different kinds of viewpoints and life experiences people are bringing, the more chance you have of really getting your arms around this life that we're living and this business that we're trying to make happen. And however you do that, and however, whether you have a faith, practice a particular religion or a particular kind of spirituality, or if you have other practices, whatever you do to help you remember that love is available in any moment, I think is the strongest anchor that any of us can have.
Well said. Holy cow. It's powerful. Thanks, brother. All right. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more about you?
Heartofbusiness.com. And I've written a book recently, just came out last year, Heart Centered Business, Healing from Toxic Business Culture so your small business can thrive. There's a lot of really practical stuff. I'd like to really emphasize that we deal with a lot of really practical things and how to make a business work, but we just like to have love at the center of it. But yeah, heartofbusiness.com and the book.
Ooh, yeah. Check him out. Check out that book. Mark's the real deal. All right. What does freedom mean to you?
I think freedom means a lot of different things. I mean, obviously, that's a huge topic. You know that you're asking the question. But I think that freedom means that I can make mistakes and that there's compassion to recover from them.
Man, that is a very eloquent and gentle description of freedom. And I think that compassion needs to be extended inwards too. I think that's where I know in the past I've missed a lot. Like I'll give compassion and grace to others, but I'm super rigid in my expectations of me. And it's like you get to the bar and you push it higher. You're like, I should have done that or whatever. Like, no, you're doing great, whatever you're doing. Even if you only got one shoe on today, you got that one on. So good job, man. Like,
That's totally me. That's
yeah.
how I had to come to this. That's how I had to come to all of this work that I do now is because I've been so harsh to myself.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, accidentally harsh to the people around me. And that was a huge healing I had to go through earlier in life and find, a gentler way of being without losing any of the strength that I carry. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, that was pretty personal what you just said too. It's like because how I do anything is kind of how I do everything. If I'm rigid with me, I'm probably rigid with the people in my life. Like so, man, life's meant to be enjoyed. Joy is love expressed, and so that's a good place to be. All right, man, this was awesome. You're definitely coming back if you're up for it. So,
Absolutely. Just really honored.
oh man, this was my pleasure. Thanks for sharing with me and you guys, and share this out. Somebody needs to hear what Mark has to say. Appreciate y'all. Make it to the end. See y'all next time. Bye, everybody. Alrighty, you guys. Thanks for making it through to the end of the Unlock Your Freedom podcast with us. Really grateful to have amazing listeners like you. Thank you guys again for listening. We love you, and we'll see you next time inside the Unlock Your Freedom podcast with Kevin Kepple.